talk, and we're going to focus the presentation in a game called Mulaka. Not sure if you are familiar with the game. But first, I'm going to introduce myself and the other panelists here. We're going to be here through the day, so if you like any of us, you can come by and talk to us. We will be happy to. My name is Arturo. I'm a games evangelist at Unity. I live in Austin, Texas, although I'm originally from Mexico City. And yeah, if you use Unity or if you want to use Unity, please come talk to me and I'm happy to talk with you. Now, the first panelist I'm going to introduce you is María Vargas. María is the founder of La Chica Gamer. She started writing about video games in 2010 with the idea of helping indie titles to get more exposure. She was born and raised in Puerto Rico, but currently lives in Austin, Texas as well. She thanks her parents for letting her be surrounded by technology and games, which have a big influence on her decision of being a computer engineer. So a big applause to María, please. Next, we have Bryan Rosario. Bryan is visiting us from New York City. He's a partner content creator on the Mixer platform, which is awesome. He has 35,000 followers on Mixer, and he streams NBA 2K games. So if you're into NBA, you should follow him. And his favorite game is, you wanna guess? NBA 2K. So yeah, a big applause to Bryan as well. Then we have Big Peña. Big is the founder and managing partner of Drop the Spotlight, where he writes, produces, and creates content. He's from San Antonio, so he didn't travel that much to be here. And he loves to play Call of Duty, GTA 5, and dance in Just Dance. So you can see a similar type of games that he likes.
Oh yeah.
Big applause again.
I can swivel my hips, y'all. I can swivel my hips.
Then we have here Guillermo Vizcaino from Lienzo. He's the head of PR and marketing. He's the lead writer and video producer at Lienzo. So he basically does everything. He works, Lienzo is the studio behind Mulaka. He was born and raised in Chihuahua, Mexico, with a big passion for games and storytelling. Guillermo's ever-changing favorite games are Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Mass Effect 2. So big applause to And finally, also from Mexico, but from another state, Veracruz. Yeah, Veracruzano. It's Jorge. He's an ex-web developer who decided to follow his passion and founded Mecha Studios. You can play Mecha Studios game, Neon City Riders, over there if you want. He founded this small indie studio where he's in charge of direction, management, coding, and sound design. His favorite game is Earthbound. So another applause to... Okay, again, thank you for being here. I was not expecting that many people, so thank you. And let's start talking about Mulaka. So first, so we all have the basic understanding of the game that we are going to focus on. I would like to ask Guillermo to tell us about Mulaka while I play the trailer here. So please, Guillermo, tell us about Mulaka.
Hello everyone. Well, before anything else, thank you for coming. It's a very, very big deal for us to be here, and we're very happy to attend and show you a little bit of what we worked on. As you probably don't know, Mulaka's game is already out. Came out 2018 in March. For those of you that do know that, I thank you for following the game. Just wanted to give you a general overview of what Mulaka is and a little bit of the story behind it. So Mulaka is a 3D action adventure game completely centered around a very specific group of people that's native from the north of Mexico and the southern part of the US called the Tarahumara. This is a Native American group of folks that, as opposed to other ancient cultures out there like the Mayans or the Aztecs or the Olmecs or etc. in Mexico, they are very much still active and they're very much still out there. And they're native from our region in the country, and we thought that it would be a disservice to the country and really to the world not to have those stories be known out there. And so what we did was basically give them the Hollywood treatment of sorts, and grab all of those stories, grab all of those myths and legends and all of that cultural heritage that they have, and translate it into the best form of storytelling, at least in our eyes. That's video games. And so what you're seeing right now is what we came up with. Originally, the story goes like this. When we started it out, we jokingly said, well, what if we do Zelda but about the Taramaras? And we were like, ha ha ha, don't be stupid, right? It's not gonna work. And we went to bed with it, we spoke to the pillow about it, and as time went on, we thought, you know, it might not be such a bad idea, right? And so we went out into a library somewhere and we read a couple books about these guys, and we went crazy. I mean, the amount of stories, of myths, of legends, of things that these guys have behind them, it's just crazy. And I'm not just saying this because I'm trying to sell the game. It turned into a game that we used to want to do, and it became a game that we had to do. Because it spoke about not just our region and the folks in our region with the Tomara, but also it spoke about something that's very much ours in the country, right? And there's very little stories about Mexico, and if I extend that a little bit, about Latin America in general, out there for the mainstream media to see. And so Mulaka was our one shot to first make a huge homage to the people behind these stories, people that we put into the very production you know, of the actual game, right? They were a part of this development as much as we were, in terms of giving us the stories, in terms of procuring the spaces and giving us the overview view of their own culture in a sense. And also it was something that's very much Mexican, and that's what we wanted to do at Lienzo. Something that the studio strives to do is to bring those stories that you don't really know about, that's not tacos or mariachis or cerveza, which all are great, I mean, and I love cocoa just like everyone here. But there's so much more that's not known that we want to showcase. And Mulaka was our first attempt at doing that. So that's basically what Mulaka is. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. I would like to ask you, who heard about Mulaka before coming to this panel? Okay. A couple of you. I think it will be like 5% of the people here, which is it's great. For those of you new to the game, I think, and we were talking about this earlier, probably Mulaka was the first Mexican game that got that attention from the press. You could go to basically every games news site and you will see something about Mulaka. So here I would like to ask you if you think that the success of Mulaka's marketing was because of someone did a great PR job, or it has something to do with the cultural background that the game has, the story that the game has. And if you want also to participate, please. I will start with Maria.
Yeah, so I think Mulaka was the first game that was able to hit something that pretty much every Latinx is looking right now. Like, we're trying to learn more about our culture and our background and how to connect like with more Latinx right now. So I think Mulaka was the first game that got the attention of everyone and put like this Latinx on the world. So right now we are, okay, I know about my culture, I got interest with Mulaka, so I'm gonna start looking for more games that are similar to the Mulaka adventure. And I think it wasn't just good PR from the studio, it was more like this, everyone looking for something new, something different, than a platform or a shooter game or RPG game.
Vic?
Yes, and today I want to know more history from different cultures. You see games out there that showcase stuff from the 14th century, 15th century, and prior to, and many fans are interested in knowing what happened, how did that culture evolve, and to what we are today. So Mulaka was something where people want to know more about the Latin culture and want to see more of because of the history that haven't been told that much out there, just in the history books and the little things that you see on TV. Mulaka is opened the doors for Latin culture.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Big said something there that we were really looking for in the game. When we first started out and set out to pitch Mulaka to the world, what we had and what we wanted people to see was that, you know, there's a lot of stories that are being told out there, and there's some folks that would argue that there's only a very small set of stories that are out there to be told. And when it comes to cultural pieces and cultural products, or cultural inspired products rather, when it comes to popular cultures, you won't see the Tarahumara in there. You're probably going to see something about the Norse, the Norse mythology, or the Greeks, or the Romans, or maybe samurais, or maybe ninjas, and that's about it, right? When it comes to cultural. And when we started out doing Mulaka, we thought, okay, so we have something like that, and it really is just like that in terms of richness, in terms of the amount of things that you can say with these stories. And it's, as you said, it's a story that has not been told, or that hadn't been told back then. And that is something that I think everyone, regardless of their cultural background, can relate to, right? Something that's unique that I haven't read or seen or played before, that's something that I want to play. And so we had that opportunity with Mulaka. And what's even better about it is that it's a story that's very much ours too. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people out there, with a lot of the community out there, especially in Latin America, because again, there wasn't that one thing that we could all rally behind. And Mulaka did a good job in terms of putting that story out there very authentically. And so that's why I think the game worked, and the game was portrayed in the IGNs and the GameSpots and the etc. That and a lot, honestly, and I mean, there's no shame in admitting it because I'm one of the developers, a lot of luck. And that's just part of this whole thing, right? There's gotta be some luck out there involved. The one thing that I can say is that for that luck to happen, you have to create those opportunities where the luck can arise, right? Where the luck can happen. And so there's a lot of work behind, but it's undoubtedly some luck too.
Okay, thank you. I was asking Guillermo, and maybe it's worth asking again, do you think the marketing work was easier because you had this story to tell? Like you had this pitch of saying, okay, this is based on these indigenous people, or was it harder?
It's, I mean, pitching any game and making marketing for any game, it's really hard regardless. Having that one advantage and having that one selling point of sorts, of being able to say, this is something that you've definitely never heard of before, it's definitely a good way of starting that conversation, right, that pitch. Because it's indeed something that you've probably never heard of prior to us mentioning it. And if you know about the Tarahumaras, you probably know that they're extremely good runners. You don't know that they have this fantastic golem-like creatures that they believe in, or this, gods that are above and below, and all of that, and that's very interesting. So that's definitely something that we think really helped pushing that speech through. Most certainly, having that story that's unique, it doesn't hurt.
Okay, thank you. Now, we've mentioned about Mulaka and its heavy influence on these cultural topics. I would like to ask all of you if you know about games with a similar background as Mulaka coming up, or are there many games out there already? And if not, do you think these stories should be told? Is there a market for games in this space?
Well, I totally think that a cultural background in a video game, it's a pretty cool tool, maybe even for the narrative perspective, right? Because you have, like, as Guillermo said, a lot of references, a lot of legends, a lot of myths you can take on and maybe make a twist to make it look a little bit fresher, right? For example, I love Odin's Sphere, and it's a game that takes like this northern culture and make it maybe a little bit more Japanese style, you know, but it's the same information. And at the same time, it opens like the door for a lot of players like me that really don't know much about that culture to understand it and to get interested in. So I believe it's a pretty cool thing and a good practice. And at the same time, it helps like not only that country but all that culture to be heard in a different platform, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can bring a good example. There's a game called Never Alone, and that's another game that I think went the same path as Mulaka, that everyone got interested because it's something we didn't know before. And I think games like Never Alone and Mulaka, and I'm pretty sure there are other games that are opening the doors for studios to say, okay, I wanna show something from my culture, from my country that nobody knows. And now I know if I do a game, people are gonna get interested. They want to learn more about it. So I think this thing of everything put together on culture is getting a big like engagement from the audience, like asking for more products.
Yeah, and you were mentioning before something like heavily focused games heavily focused on a given culture, and you were mentioning like God of War. There are other examples from Asian cultures. I guess the question is Latinx themes or topics, they haven't been heavily covered in games yet, and we are kind of opening the doors for more games like this to be released, which I think it's super exciting. Now we are talking about how cool these games are. The next question will be what the challenges are of focusing on these topics, because well, right now I think it's easy to offend anyone by expressing something, and you have to be careful when you do that. What are the challenges of creating these type, not only these type of games, but this type of media, because like Maria, Big, Bryan, they also create media. What are the challenges when we want to get?
The challenges is out there just because no one's seen something like that, so they have different expectations. 10, 15 years ago, expectation from a Latino is a certain way, you know, like piñatas and stuff like that, so they see in a different view. But once now the culture is being defined and showcased of how a Latino grew from many centuries of being on this planet, it opens the eyes and people want to dig into more of our culture and want to know, like, okay, that happened? This is going on? This was like, people are very interested in that. And with the opening of Mulaka, it gave people more advantage to look into that culture, look into that history, open up a textbook, like, you know, I want to read these stories. I want to play these stories. I want to see what happens next. Because we already know what's going on now in 2020. What happened back then? And that's the story people want to know, because it's never been showcased. So I don't think people will get offended, maybe from rituals or something like that from the early Aztecs and Mayans, but I think when people fully know the story behind it, fully know the other stories that come with it, I'm not saying it's going to be more accepting, but it's going to be more like, okay, this happened because of this. This happened because of that. Then the Spanish came over from Spain 2 months ago. So, you know, stuff like that, people are very, very interested.
Yeah, well, sorry. Yeah, what I believe it's like a hard thing to do, especially in Mexico as a game developer, is like using this, sadly, our culture, it tries to be like alienate with the culture itself. I don't know how to express it, but back in some years ago or more years ago, if as you are growing up, you try like to get as far as possible of your heritage, right? Like that's the Mexican way, at least my as I grew up, right? So it's hard to take those topics because a lot of people, if they see, okay, it's a Mexican game, a lot of Mexicans, they say it's a Mexican game, I'm not interested in it, you know? But In the other hand, I believe like the media and stuff, and as the case in Mulaka, it's easier for you to try to promote a game that talks about cultural content because the media is interested in it. So it's kind of hard like to balance that the media wants cultural games, but the gamers maybe don't. I think that's been changing in the last few years, but it's been at least 5 or 10 years ago, it was like not a selling point to have a cultural game, you know?
Yeah, I want to touch on that subject. You know, it's I'm glad that I'm Latin and that I play NBA 2K because you don't really see a lot of people, a lot of Latins play NBA 2K, and it's you know, when I was trying to pick my character, you know, it was Asians and black people that I could only choose from, and it's like, you know, we play the game too, and it would be nice to see, you know, more characters that I can choose, you know, based on my race, and yeah, it's crazy to see that, you know, in me being a content creator, you know, I try to show people, because like there's people that actually think like you have to be a certain race to play a game, and you don't have to be. And me being Latin and playing NBA 2K, I can make sure that, you know, people understand that just because you are a certain race doesn't mean you have to play, you know, a certain type of game. And yeah, there's a lot of people that don't know that because you know, me being a content creator, you know, I'll get like a comment saying, "Oh, you're not black, why are you playing NBA 2K?" And it's like, you know, that shouldn't even be the case because it's a game that I love, and it's what you know, I play that game to escape reality for a little bit, and that's yeah, that's it.
Yeah, one thing that I see repeating over and over is this story of young kids playing games or reading books or watching movies or cartoons and telling their parents like, oh, the character that I'm seeing there looks like me. And I think that's great for like underrepresented groups when you can say like, oh, I can choose that character that looks like me, and that's an option, and it's an option for me to become I don't know, an astronaut or whatever. That's great. I also think like in games you play because you sometimes just want to be something, you know, someone else, and not necessarily you want to deny who you are or where you're coming from. You just want to try to see what being someone else means. Now I have a question. I think for you, Bryan, mostly about you're a streamer. You stream content. You focus on on basketball games. The question is, are people expecting content as are they expecting you to play games like Mulaka, or not you, streamers? Is there like a market for those type of streams focused on games like Mulaka, for instance?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, sorry. Let me rephrase. Like you have like, I guess, like a niche that you focus on for your streams, which is maybe people interested in basketball or this type of game. Do you think there's also a niche for people wanting to watch streams of games like Mulaka, for instance?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance for a streamer to focus on this topic? Okay. Anyone want to add something? Maria? Yeah.
Yeah, so I can give an example of the creating posts and trying to find like, I'm not gonna be posting like all day, oh, this game has sold so many copies and that game is gonna have a new DLC. I sometimes trying to find new types of information. So I remember like maybe 10 years ago, I'll be writing about a game. So like, for example, Mulaka, and I'll be like, oh my God, am I really gonna post this? Like, what people are gonna think of me? And like right now, I see the engagement. Like if I create like an article about some Latino developer, they gain because they don't have the same reach. Like they don't get articles like Otaku and IGN places. And I see the difference of making that post and trying to put it like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And I see like a lot of people is interested right now for these really, really small indie devs with great ideas, but they didn't know about them. And like games that are already launched that you can actually go and play now, they're like, oh, I never knew that game came out. Like I didn't know about that studio. So like now with these Latinx that we are living right now, if you write about a really small game, people is really interested of engaging with those games and learning more about the developers. And like, I even have people tweeting like, hey, like, I found this studio. Like, do you know if there are ways that I can help them to keep reaching other people to learn about their games? And I'm pretty sure 10 years ago we wouldn't be able to do that. Like we right now have social media, like everyone can help any studio or small games that they really like to keep reaching more people.
Yeah. Anyone want to add?
Yes, and I love watching streams on Mixer and Twitch a lot of times when I'm at home. And a lot of times I see streamers showcasing new indie games out there to their fans. A lot of times the fans do want to check it out. I don't think it'll hurt their niche crowd, but I feel that a lot of fans do want to see what's out there, and they do want to see their favorite streamers try it out, play it. And their streamers could, either do a speed run or tell their fans, like, this is probably a good game or this is not a good game. But it gives them the chance to showcase it to their fans. And I love watching stuff on Mixer and Twitch just because I have a lot of friends out there that are streamers, and they have been doing more indie games lately.
Yeah, I also think. Oh, sorry, you wanted to add something? Okay, no. As I told you at the beginning of the presentation, I recently moved to the States and I've had the chance to meet other Latinx people, people whose parents are from Mexico, but probably they have never been to Mexico. So playing these games or reading these books with these topics helps them to know a bit about their background, right? Even if they haven't experienced that firsthand. And also for people who don't live in their country anymore, it's a nice way to keep to being connected to their roots. So
yeah, on that note, you wanted to? On that note, I think it's one of the. If I had to pick one thing that we should take away from, especially speaking from the indie dev perspective. I think that independent games and independent game developers have, on the one side, this unique opportunity. On the other side, I think it's almost a responsibility of doing those things that probably someone bigger, someone that's a AAA development studio, or someone that's in a different route or a different phase of their growth as a company. It's that we have the opportunity to tell those things that others probably wouldn't really have the courage or the need of doing, right? And we can go out there and do something very, very, sometimes very weird, or some just outright unknown kind of shit, right? But we can also take those opportunities to talk about things that no one else will talk about. In our case, it's a culture that's from Mexico, right? But I know a whole lot of people down in South America, for instance, people in Colombia, people in Brazil, people in Ecuador that have fantastic games about their own cultures, about represented everywhere else, right? And no one else is gonna make a story about those folks. And the only one that can do that, the only folks that can do that is them, right? It's themselves. And so they have that responsibility and that unique opportunity of saying those stories no one will really care to look at. And that, and as you were mentioning with the challenges, sometimes people look over at us and say like, oh, you don't have the right to do, to speak about any given culture in this or that way. And, the other way of seeing that is, well, but who will, right? It's, maybe no one out there will ever speak about those folks. And what's better in that scenario, not to know about them at all, or know them from the perspective of someone that's only tangentially related. And that's something that's very hard to balance, and that I don't really have the right answer to. But in my case, very personally, I think we should do go out there and do say this and do tell those stories, because, I mean, it's better for them to be out there and then in retrospect go back and see them and learn from them, rather than just leave them there to really to be forgotten at one point, right?
Yeah, and talking about that, I believe that, as you said, some people get like offended that you don't have the right to do this because you are not maybe from this background, this cultural background. I believe that everyone should be like able to do whatever they want to do, as long as you have like a solid gameplay, a fun game, and of course you are like respectful with the culture you are playing with, right? Like for example, Guacamole is made by a Canadian studio, and it represents pretty good like the Mexican culture. I mean, they have like one Mexican in the dev team, but I played it and I was like so excited, and I totally identified with the game, right? And I believe they made like an awesome job. And as a Mexican, I'm looking forward to do something like that, you know? And they are not even Mexican. So I believe everyone should have like the right to do it. So please do.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point because we make games. So the first thing, in my opinion, should be like have something that is fun to play or that achieves its goal. And then, well, if it has a nice story as a background or nice characters, or that's like plus stuff. But at first, it should be a great game, right? Yeah. So now the next question is a capitalism question, and it basically means making these type of games. Is there a market for them in the world, like something that makes it interesting for developers to try to go after, or which is also valid, are we making these games because we want to preserve these stories or because we want to tell stories, but doesn't necessarily mean there's a big market for them. And I think we just need opinions. I don't think anyone has like an answer, but we would like to get opinions.
Yeah, I mean, personally for us at Lienzo, you know, part of the vision of the studio is to do that, right? To try and preserve and to try to bring to spotlight those stories that people won't really talk about, and that comes with a big challenge of knowing if there's even a market for those stories to be, you know, interesting for a potential consumer, and it's a tough one because I mean, as you said, we don't have the final answer in this. There's definitely a lot of people out there, a lot of people out there that are interested in stories like this. There's a whole lot of folks that want to know not just about indigenous cultures, but also just cultures in general, right? Be it Mexican or Latin American or Oriental or whatever, right? There's a lot of people out there that want to know more about this. It's not the majority, and that's something that an indie developer should know. It's these types of stories, unless you're a God of War or something like that, it's gonna be tough to reach that broad, huge audience. But the folks that you're gonna reach, at least in our very personal experience, are folks that are very passionate, right? And that are very much in there and that will be, for lack of a better term, loyal to that you're trying to do, which is tell those different very specific type of things in terms of culture, for instance. So as long as you can go out and broadcast that message out there, there's definitely some folks that are gonna come over and give you more than enough to keep doing what you're doing, right? To live to fight another day, if I may use that. So yeah, there's definitely an audience that you have to reach. It's gonna be tough to reach them if that's something that an indie dev should know. It's gonna be tough, but there's folks out there that want your games.
Yeah, and sorry. And as a game developer, people always ask us why your game doesn't look like a Mexican game, right? Or why didn't you pick like a Mexican team to do it? And I always say that we actually did. I mean, our product reflects like our cultural like background and the things we learned like living in Mexico, right? Maybe it's not like taromaras and stuff, but I believe it has like its unique experience and its unique essence linked to the culture we lived in, right? So also we didn't pick like a more cultural team, maybe like I don't know, like Olmecs and stuff, because sadly in Mexico we are like pretty ignorant about it, right? Even as Mexicans, or at least it's my case and my friends. Like we know about our culture, but as I told you before, as you grew up, we are not really interested in our culture. Or we didn't used to. Thankfully, that's changing, and with efforts like Mulak and stuff in the gaming terms. But in our case, that was it, and I believe it's harder, or it was harder, like to market that kind of games, as Guillermo said, right? Thankfully, Lienzo are these like big banners that are showing all the game developers in Mexico that it's possible, and that it's a market that has a chance, right? So I believe that's changing in the last couple years.
And just a quick addition to that, and it's very important if you're a developer out there. What's important, it's, as long as you have a game that's fun, that's the most important thing, right? Because I mean, at the end, what you want to do is just go there, sit down, play something, and if that something manages to put a smile on your face, whatever the topic, whatever the themes, whatever the thing that you're trying to say as your message, the first thing is that you have to have fun with it. So if you do a game like this, do a good game, right? And that's why we generally go out there and say, like, oh yeah, it's a sale of sorts, but of this particular culture, and you think selling, you say, oh, but that game is fun, I want to have fun, so I might give this game a chance and a shot, and that's very, very crucial when it comes to, we don't go out there saying, oh, come and learn with us about this, guys. It's have fun with it, and once you have fun with it, you can go on a Friday night with your friends and be like, oh my God, this game has this huge goals that I really like, you should try it out. And that's the objective that we want to pursue with a game like Mulak, and with the games that we're doing right now, right? Something that's very fun, that doesn't have to sell itself by saying it's about a something culture. It sells itself because it's fun, and then you get to learn because we sneak that learning in there. Like, that's what we want to do with it.
I think Guillermo reads minds, because I was about to say the same thing. If you have a good story and your game is fun, I'm pretty sure you're gonna have a lot of people that is interested of playing your game, and then getting more friends like, hey, I have this game, do you wanna play? And then the other friends are gonna be, hey, I have another group of friends, do you wanna play the game? And that's a big way to get your game to a lot more people.
I have a question for you, Maria. You focus on indie developers, indie games, or trying to help them showcase their games. You think, or have you seen that these developers are telling new stories that may be larger?
Every developer has their own story, and they put a piece of it on their games. Like, it can be a platformer with cats, or games where you have someone taking care of a house or something. But every developer has their own story on how they struggle to be their game, to like, hey, I got this crazy idea and I want to create a game. Because I used to cover about pretty much AAA and all those types of games, but with the years I learned that these indie developers that are creating their first game, they're really, really, really passionate about their games. Like, if I sit down with one of those indie developers, I know for sure I'm gonna spend like 5 to 10 hours just like, when I see a game that is the release date and they go to the market, I get really excited because I was like, damn, I've been following that developer since day one. And even took 1 year, 2 years, 3 months, and they release a game. And like, I don't even part of the studio, like, I think I'm more excited than all of them together, like, oh my God, the game is out finally. And I really get excited to see more stories. AAA games are good games, but from my experience, in these really small games, I get much more fun and like learn much more than a God of War and games like that. But like playing Mulaka and stuff like that, like it triggers something on your mind. It's like, I want to learn more. I want to see there are more games like it.
Perfect. I think we've focused entirely on games that are heavily representing culture, but also other games, and you play GTA 5. They also have representation, cultural representation from different cultures there. Is that right? Like if you play
Yes.
these games, there's something.
Oh, yeah, there's something in there, you know. There's something in there, and fans love just playing them, you know. And it tells a point where a game that's made about a generation ago from another platform, like from the I had that game when I was at the Xbox 360, and it's still going on now with the Xbox One, and most likely the new Xbox. It says something because people want to play that. People want to continue playing that, and the investment is there. So there is a market for games like this. There is people wanting to play and wanting to know more. It's just, I believe the process of just getting it out there, getting the right story, the right studio to bring that out there and get the fans wanting more, more, and more.
Perfect, thank you. So we have to wrap up. I would like to ask each one of you any last words that you have. I'm not killing you, but
My last words?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, what I said earlier, that if you want like to make games, do it. It doesn't matter if it has or don't like a heavy cultural content. Yeah, the main thing about games are to be fun, to be solid, to be a grateful experience, right? So if you can like squeeze some cultural content, it's nice, and if people gets interested on it thanks to that, it's better. So please do it, and yeah, I believe that's it.
Yeah, it would go somewhere along those same lines. I mean, uh, at the end, the artist is entitled to portray in his art whatever he so chooses and pleases to do, right? The one thing that I would say is, well, if you are an artist with a particular background or you're a part of a specific community, you can do so if you choose, but what I would say is don't be afraid of portraying those traits that might make you different, right? Whether that's if you're part of a underrepresented community like the Latinx community or any other, use that because it's valuable, and it's, I think, in the overall scene when it comes to gaming, it's more valuable to have those different voices and those different perspectives rather than to go with the same old safe stories and aspects and things like that, right? So if you're gonna make a game about cars, well, maybe there's a certain model out there of a car that's made in your community or that speaks more to the type of folk that you are rather than to the rest of the mainstream media, right? So, and go with that. It's valid and it's encourageable, I think. So that would be it, yeah. Other than that, I mean, thank you guys for being here. But I think we'll have a more formal goodbye after that. So yeah, do that, do it, do games.
I just say, you know, play the games, man. The developers that have done all the hard work, created it, put their blood, sweat, and tears. Check it out. Have fun. If it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. But it could be your friend's cup of tea. It could be that person's cup of tea. Just have fun, you know?
I'll say, you know, play whatever game you want to play, no matter, you know, if they're, whatever, they're trying, don't be scared to play a game if you feel like, oh, this is, you know, I'm scared because I'm afraid of what people might say or whatever. Just have fun because people is going to talk, you know, everybody's going to have an opinion, so just do what you feel is right and play the game that you want to play and make the game that you want to create. And make sure, like, you know, you have you talk about every culture and everything. There's not just one, because if you just focus on one, then I feel like, you know, if, you know, it needs to be more games out there where every culture needs to be talked about, not just one, because, you know, it's the same as, oh, there's only this type of culture in this game. You know, it's like, oh, I want to make this type of game because, you know, it's like, don't be like everybody, be different, and talk about every culture. That's about it.
From my take, search for this game, find these games, try these games, share your voice about these games. Because I'm pretty sure you might have a crazy idea. Like, I have an idea. If I can find a game on how to make a cafecito, I will be very happy. So if someone needs an idea, make a cafecito game, like a Cuban cafecito game. I mean, but search for these games. There's a lot of good small indie dev studios. Like, reach them, try to learn more, like, support them, because I bet you there are a lot of really great games right now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think it's pretty interesting. It's pretty fun to talk about this, to talk about how our culture gets into a game. But I also think it's super interesting and exciting to think about how the games that we play are um, are being pasted in our lives, right? Like we all right now here share a culture because we probably play the same games, which is great. Even when we come from different backgrounds, we are being shaped by the games we play, and we share those things. So if it's a Halo that we all play or a Forza that we all play, that's pretty exciting to know that we are different, but we also share the same things. So thank you very much. We have a couple of minutes for a couple of questions in case anyone wants to ask something. I don't know if we have mics, but if you can speak really loud. Oh, we do, so you don't have to speak loud. Any question? Yes. There's one here in the front. Oh.
Hello, thank you. Well, what Mulaka did for the Mexican and Latin American game industries, it was pretty cool. It pretty much put every one of us in the spot, and thanks for that. But how can we, as a Latin American community of devs, can use this to take as advantage for, this is going to be a pretty difficult question because it's going to involve a lot of politics and economics. But how can we use that to encourage our governments, Mexican and Latin American governments, to take a look at the gaming industry as a viable industry? Because you know, I too live in Mexico, and it's pretty, the support from the government, it's pretty barren, or no at all. So how can we use this as a possible investment opportunity for the government?
Well, it's indeed a very tough question. I don't think there's a clear answer. I mean, the best that we can do, at least in my mind, because I mean, making a real impactful change is something that's going to take years. It's not something that can be done over a small amount of time, right? Most likely than not going to come. And once we get rid of that, just try and do the best that we can with what we have. And I know it's a very non-answer type of answer, but just by the very fact of surviving, that's already the first step for eventually reaching that point where, oh look, there's more students than I thought. So, and then that it's from that the recognition and the meaning governmental. It's gonna follow, right? But for that to happen, we have to have a full set of studios and a full set of people doing things that are able to survive and support themselves by themselves. And again, I know it's a very much a non-answer, but it's about time. And the only way we're gonna get there is by making it by luck or by having great products, hopefully great products, for a longer span of time. There's efforts already going on in terms of Mexico. You know, a few of the studios are already actually here that are banding together and creating a community of development that everyone that's developing games in Mexico or Latin America can join and can be a part of, even if it's just for exchange of information and exchange of experience. That's very valuable. That type of efforts are being done and are being done slowly and seldomly, but are there. And with time, we'll see an evolution of that and a growth of that. And hopefully in a couple of years, we'll get something that's a little bit more substantial on that front. But for the time being, the best that we can do is just surviving. And that's the best that I can give you, man.
And I can add like an example from Puerto Rico. I know there have been talks with the government, and I know recently they created this law for esports to support events and like these big tournaments for like Capcom and stuff to have them on the island. And I know they're working for game development. They're trying to convince the government to show like, hey, like this can have a good impact for the economy on the island. So I know that right now, like, there have been some talks for the past 5 years, if I'm not wrong, but in Puerto Rico, it was hard to remove that stigma around gaming and video games, and they're starting to take it seriously as the business as it is. So I know it takes a lot of time, like conversations, to play around this stigma and I say, hey, this is a real business, these are real jobs, it's not, oh, I'm gonna make a game, blah, blah, blah. But like, hey, this is a real business. And I know maybe the next year, this year, but soon, that they're gonna be, because they're talking to create laws for incentives for people to create their own studios in Puerto Rico. And I will be very happy if they're able to do it sooner. But I know in Mexico, it will be the same thing, like starting to remove this stigma, like take me seriously. It's not like, this is not like a side job, like this is my real job. And after you remove that stigma, you go past it, it's gonna be a little bit easier to help them understand, and they find ways to help to have more studios and support them.
And I'd like to add on there is be sure the two biggest things, numbers and achievements. No one knows what you have done until you tell them, oh, I have 90,000 views on this game, or I have 100,000 downloads on this game. You need to show them what you have. Because you can tell them, oh, I'm doing this, and they'll look at you like, where's the proof? I had that so much starting to drop the spotlight to the point where I had to carry paperwork like, oh, my podcast now is going to Orlando, Florida. We went to New York. Oh, you guys did? What are you guys doing there? And that's when it opens up the doors. So showing them what your game has done, showing them what impact it can do. We now hired 20 new people now. So they have a livable wage. So you can tell them, like, I could do, with your support, let's do 100. But you have to be there with me. We get to 40, let's get to 100. So the numbers, the achievements, they have to see what you have done in the past and currently doing in order for them to open their eyes.
Any other question? There's one back there.
Can you hear me? Okay, there it goes. I don't think it'll be as intense as the government question, but it might be stigmatized in terms of it's the language. And so when I'm playing this Mulaka game, do I have the choice? With, like, for example, is it an audio where the characters are speaking to you, or are you reading a dialogue? And in that dialogue, is it in Spanish? Is it in English? Is that something that you guys want to overcome, where the game is in Spanish primarily?
Yes, there's a work that's done for finding that balance. In our specific case with Mulaka, what we did is that we knew that what our market was and where that market was, and in order for you to be profitable in this gaming making universe that we are on, you have to make sure that you have your English there, yes for yes. I mean, it's a necessity. You have to be able to be universal, right, in terms of what you and how you reach your audience. That said, we also, because we are also catering to that Latin American community, we also have Spanish in there, and that's all. Like, there's not really any voice acting in the game, so it's all in the form of subtitles and text box and whatnot. So everything is both languages. And in our specific case, I mean, specifically talking about Mulaka, we have an added language that's indeed a little bit of a voiceover at the beginning, at the end, with the original Tarahumara language, because we also wanted to have that preservation of language aspect embedded in the game, right? So there's narration that's done in the actual Tarahumara native tongue, and that's in there for everyone. That's not like, that's there and you have to listen to it. There's no way around it, because I mean it's by design. But yeah, no, it's something that if you're doing a game and you're just starting, and maybe you're in Colombia for saying anything, and you do your game in Spanish, because I mean, all my community speaks Spanish, and my market will speak Spanish. Well, no, because when you go out there, you're competing with everyone, not just your immediate, like, neighboring folks, right? So in that sense, I would always argue that it's the safest option to always be there with English, and so you're universal, and then cater to everyone else, especially if it's your community. I mean, the more, it's not like a responsibility, but it's almost like a non-spoken thing that you should do, right? You should also have your thing in Spanish, because you already speak it and you know how to write it, so just putting it out there, even if it's gonna take a little bit more time. But yeah, so that's, I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and your thoughts. And thank you very much to the organizers for giving us the space. So, thank you.